So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shamika Kiritan, and I'm here to talk about how mass incarceration is one of the most urgent and complex issues facing the American justice system today. With the United States leading the world in the incarceration race, the system has raised serious concerns about fairness, racial inequality, and long-term impact on communities. This speech will explore the racial and ethnic disparities in incarceration, the effects of mandatory minimum sentencing, ongoing sentencing reforms, and the role of cash bail and pretrial detention in deepening inequality. Mass incarceration in the United States is a crisis that reflects deep-rooted inequalities in the criminal justice system. Although the U.S. holds just 5% of the world's population, it accounts for nearly 25% of the global prison population, but make up approximately 33% of the incarcerated population, while Latinos are also proportionately imprisoned. These disparities are not explained by crime rates alone, but by systematic issues like racial profiling, discriminatory sentencing, and limited access to quality legal representation. The driver of mass incarceration has been mandatory minimum sentencing law, especially these tied to nonviolent drug offenses. These laws really introduced the war on drugs in the 1980s, removed judicial discretion, and required fixed person terms regardless of circumstances. For instance, crack cocaine offenses once carried far harsher penalties than powder cocaine, disproportionately affecting black communities. While intending to deter drug use, the policies instead flooded prison with low-level offenders, often young men of color, and contributed to long-term cycles of poverty and incarceration. Efforts toward sentencing reform have begun to address some of those issues. The First Step Act passed in 2018 allowed certain federal inmates to earn early release and reduce mandatory minimum for some drug crimes. Several states have also revised their three-strike laws and reduced penalties for nonviolent crimes. However, critics argue these changes are too narrow and do not fully revise decades of overly harsh punishment or address racial disparities. Meaningful reform requires a systematic overhaul not only of sentencing laws, but also how communities are policed and prosecuted. Another major contribution to unjust incarceration is the pretrial detention system driven by cash bail. Every day, hundreds of thousands of individuals remain in jail not because they've been convicted, but because they cannot afford bail. This disproportionately impacts low-income communities and people of color, often pressuring them to plead guilty just for them to get out of jail. Some states have begun to move away from cash bail and implement risk-based assessments instead. But these tools also raise concerns about racial bias and fairness. Ending mass incarceration requires more than just legislative tweaks, but it demands a shift toward a justice system that is equitable, compassionate, and truly just. In conclusion, mass incarceration in the USA is a complex issue shaped by racial and ethnic disparities, and mandatory minimum sentencing, limited sentencing reform, and an unfair bail change. By being informed, I feel like we can better support policies that promote fairness, equity, and justice within the criminal justice legal system. Thank you.